What's going on, everyone? So let's talk about Day'ron Sharpe. A lot of talks, a lot of buzz about Day'ron Sharpe potentially going to the Lakers. In all honesty, he's the guy that the Lakers probably should have gotten in the Dorian Finney-Smith trade. They ended up getting Shake Milton. They should have, even if they had to pony up a little more assets in order to get Day'ron Sharpe, probably should have done that, right? I mean, he's a guy, excellent rebounder, right? Big, tough, physical, interior presence, isn't afraid to bang with the big boys, the bull in the china shop type of center, right? He's not a true 7-footer, but he is, 265, so he's got the size and the weight to bang with the big boys. Good wingspan, can rebound, positions himself really well, 6'9" in height. But he is a guy that ideally would probably be best in a backup role, right? But even in a pinch and starter, I prefer a true 7-footer personally, but he is that big, physical, strong type of center that the Lakers are looking for. Could be that lob threat, all of that. Day'ron makes sense. Now, supposedly the Lakers didn't get Day'ron Sharpe in that move because there was a lot of focus on Luka and they kind of didn't know how things were going to play out, right? Which makes sense based on the information that we got. The Luka trade, or at least initial conversation, the Nico joke of like, hey, what do you think about Luka, would have happened around the time of Dorian Finney-Smith, right? When they traded for Dorian Finney-Smith, there was even talks about like the Lakers might have traded for Dorian Finney-Smith because they thought there was a potential to get Luka. Obviously, Dorian Finney-Smith was a guy you needed regardless, but it was like, hey, you get Dorian Finney-Smith, that could also help with Luka, kind of two birds, one stone type thing, right? But Day'ron Sharpe, the only way the Lakers would be able to get him is via sign and trade, right? Which you got to keep in mind, would hard cap you at the second apron. However, he is a guy that you're probably not signing. He's not making $20 million a year, so it's not something where it's like, ooh, you're going to have to, no, he's a guy that's cheap enough to where you're probably, maybe you're sending a guy like, hey, who do you want? Ideally, to me, with a Day'ron Sharpe, I would like multiple. Like, can you get Claxton and Day'ron? Right? Can you get Cam Johnson and Day'ron? Right? Like, to me, I'd want multiple pieces. Can you get a Zaire Williams? Right? Like, can you like, to me, I don't want, like, just for Day'ron, it'd be tough, right? Because the Nets don't want to take on a bunch of long-term salary. Now, maybe you could convince them, if you threw them a pick swap and, your second, maybe you could get Day'ron Sharpe and then have them take like a Gabe Vincent or something like that, or like a Maxi Kleber or something like that, and clear, whatever, like what is Day'ron's new contract going to be? Probably $8 to $10 million a year, right? So, maybe you could do something where you're dumping salary in a trade, but to me, it just, how much does Day'ron want as far as his next contract? What type of role and opportunities is he looking for, right? And, like, what would you have to give up to get him, right? Like, usually when you're talking about sign and trade deals, it's like, okay, we're gonna give you, a second or 2 seconds assets for facilitating the trade. You're not selling the farm in order to do something like that, right? So maybe you're doing something where you're swapping. He's getting 4 years, $40 million, and you're swapping Maxi Kleber for him, right? And then throwing in a pick swap. Boom. There you go. Now you got Day'ron Sharpe. Now you got, a 23-year-old. He'll be 24 in November. But, to start next season, basically 24-year-old center that could start or come off the bench for you for the next 10 years. Right? And a guy that, again, excellent rebounder, can block shots, protect the rim. Again, strong, hard-nosed, physical type of center. So, look, I've been a guy that's been big on Day'ron. I've liked Day'ron Sharpe. I would love Day'ron. I still would prefer a better starting center, right? Or at least somebody with more experience. I wouldn't hate something where you got like a Clint Capella as like your starter, as like a gap year. Get Clint Capella, sign trade Day'ron Sharpe, and then at some point maybe make that transition. I would prefer a true 7-footer, right? Like, even like a Naz Reid or something like that. I'd love a Naz Reid, right? Could you work out a sign and trade and go get a Naz Reid, right? But like, is he ideal as your starting center, right? Like, he's similar, 6'9", he's got the wingspan, right? He's averaging 14 and 6 off the bench. What does he look at as a starter, right? Day'ron Sharpe is a better rebounder than him, though. And I think you can make the argument is a better interior center. Naz Reid, I think, is more versatile in ways. He's better moving laterally to defend on the perimeter. But Day'ron Sharpe, he can do that in spots. I Honestly, as far as centers go, I would rather have Day'ron Sharpe be your starting center than a Naz Reid. I'm not saying Day'ron Sharpe is better than Naz Reid. I'm saying as a starting center, if you had to go with like a 6'9" guy. I just think Day'ron Sharpe is more physically imposing. He's more physical. He's a better rebounder, right? He's a better shot blocker, right? I like him better. Naz Reid to me is better as a 4 who can also slot in and play small ball 5, right? So like you could go and have, let's say, Nick Claxton as your starting center, Naz Reid as your 4, and then Nick Claxton, when he goes to the bench, slide Naz Reid at the 5 and you're fine. But as like your starting and closing center, I would personally prefer Day'ron Sharpe because I just think what this team needs as far as like that interior presence, I just think Day'ron Sharpe gives you that better from what we've seen, right? Where Naz Reid, he's more of the floor stretching, right? Versatile defensive wing. He's more perimeter oriented, where Day'ron's more interior focused. But I digress. Point is, Day'ron Sharpe. I really like Day'ron Sharpe. If you can get Day'ron Sharpe, I still think you go get Day'ron Sharpe. Obviously, again, depends on what is the cost. What do you have to pony up? How much does he cost in order to do so? But what does he give you production-wise? Well, 50 games played last year, 18 minutes per game, right? So not playing a ton of minutes. Keep that in mind. 18 minutes is important, right? He's averaging 52% from the field on 6.3 attempts, 24.4%. So he's a career 30% three-point shooter. He's not a guy I would trust shooting the 3 ball right now, but he has shown the ability to do so, which is good. And he's young enough to where you can continue to grow and develop him as a potential, floor spacer while also maintaining on the inside. He's not a guy I'd want to transition into a 3, primarily, get those centers that are taking like 8 threes a game. I wouldn't want him to be that. I like that he's a big physical interior center, right? Big physical interior presence, rebounds the ball well, does all that stuff. I don't want to to me, it'd be more of a luxury. He's a guy that can step out and knock down the 3 ball rather than a guy you're looking to do that possession after possession after possession. I want him more inside, baiting offensive rebounds, doing the dirty work, doing the hustle plays. That's kind of where I look at him. But guy, again, career 29.5%, so basically 30% three-point shooter, but not a guy that I would want shooting threes right now. Guy that continue to work, grow, and develop. 2-point range, 5.4 attempts, 56.6% from the field, EFG of 53.8%. Free throw shooting was 75.7% from the field on 1.5 attempts, which was the best free throw shooting of his career. He is a career 65% free throw shooter, but it's a good sign that on the second most attempts of his career, he shot 75.7%. Rebounding, he averaging 6.6 rebounds, including 3 offensive rebounds. 6.6 rebounds, including 3 offensive rebounds. He's doing that in 18 minutes of action. Naz Reid in 25 minutes of action in a backup role, just same thing with, a Day'ron Sharpe, is averaging 6 rebounds a game. Right? Naz Reid is, a Day'ron Sharpe, which just, I wanted to mention that because it highlights what I was talking about earlier. Right? Day'ron Sharpe is an excellent rebounder. Right? We're going to get in his per 36 because it's insane. 2 assists, a steal, and a block per game with 8 points. This guy is an 8 and 6 with 2 assists, a steal, and a block per game in 18 minutes of action, right? And basically a backup role. Like, that is excellent. What does he translate to in a starting role? Like, what would that look like as a starter? Well, let me tell you, in his per 36. Now, keep in mind, per 36 doesn't tell you everything, right? You see guys a lot of times like really good in like 18 minutes of action, but if they get 25 minutes of action, they're terrible. But just something to keep in mind. Right, 16 points, 13 rebounds, including 6 offensive rebounds, 4 assists, 1.5 steals, 2 blocks per game. If he was a full-time starter, I would prefer him as a full-time starter if you had to at your center spot than say a Naz Reid or something like that, right? If you were going the undersized route. Again, I would prefer you go get a real center, but I'm not against, like I said, a stopgap center. I'm not against you going and getting a Clint Capella, right? So sign and trade for Day'ron Sharpe, right? Boom, you got Day'ron. Go and sign Clint Capella to your whatever taxpayer mid-level. have Clint Capella be your starter, right? Day'Ron be your backup. And then at some point, you can make that transition if you wanted to, or finish the year kind of right out the year, split the minutes. I mean, you could even give Day'Ron more minutes, or you could even give Day'Ron, whatever, the 30 minutes a night, and Clint Capella's playing 20, whatever, right? Like, or I guess that'd be wrong, but 28 and 20, right? Whatever, however you want to structure it. But I would prefer somebody that has the experience as a starter, has been the starter, that makes sense, fit the role, be a lob threat. Clint Capella's still one of the better offensive rebounders. Or again, if you can get a Nick Claxton, go get a Nick Claxton and a Day'Ron Sharpe. Now you solve your center position. That's why I mentioned earlier, if you're going to sign and trade for Day'Ron Sharpe, I would want to get other players in the deal, right? I would want, can you get Nick Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe? Now you got both your center, but now you got your starting center, your backup center, and you can even, again, make that transition at some point if you want to, right? Like, that is kind of what I'd be looking to do if I was the Lakers. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. As always, this is a discussion. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. Helps me enjoy these types of videos. I truly appreciate it. Now subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.